chug, 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 chug,
Hello, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when talking about children's card games. And it is probably our favorite time of the year. It is the end of the year. We got all things 2024. What are we going to be doing in 2025? We got favorite cards, favorite sets, highlights, controversies. If it happened, we'll probably talk about it.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't listen back to many of our episodes, but the ones I do listen to are typically the year in review, because I'm like, gosh, what even happened last year? And I'll listen to our episode and I'll be like, wow, that was a lot of stuff. And like, we typically do a pretty good job of like covering all the major things. So I'm excited for this episode.
Yeah, same. And of course, before we even like get into it, because we got a lot to talk about, what are we drinking, Blake?
Well, today I am drinking, you know how there's those Arizona teas? They're marketed as like, 99 cents, less than $1. And the brand has been pretty good about that. Well, they recently came out with their hard iced teas. And also, like, I think they're called their juice cocktails. So like there's different sets, and like there's like 4 different flavors in each of those sets. So right now I'm drinking the Arizona hard real brewed iced tea with peach, and they're only like 5% alcohol, but they're pretty tasty. They're nice light little drinks. I like them. Now they're not as big as like the full cans, but they're very much like hand sized. Fits in the palm of your hand.
Did you say how much one of these cost if the normal ones are only like $1, 99 cents? Like how much was this?
Yeah, 12. They come in 12 counts, and I think they're about $20.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. It's alcoholic, so you got to consider that,
right?
Especially if you live in like Washington State, which has a high alcohol tax. That's gonna make it pretty pricey.
For sure.
How about you, Guy? What are you drinking tonight?
Well, we were talking about this a little beforehand, but I got, I think, duped because, well, I guess not duped. This is just my own ignorance or making assumptions, but I got a aperitif wine, and I was like, oh, so it's like wine. But then I looked it up, and it's not just wine. It is a fortified wine, so that means that there is a distilled liquor of some kind that is infused, so it makes it stronger. So it's like drinking wine with brandy, almost. And this one's got a very floral taste to it, too, so I poured one glass. It's a very pretty amber color, but you don't take like a big gulp of this at a time. You kind of just take sips. It's bitter, but I think it's fine. It's something new for sure. And since it's the end of the year, I was like, oh, I'll buy like a nice bottle, treat myself. But yeah, this one is Serene. That's the brand. It's an Americano Bianco.
And what were you expecting when you initially bought this?
For it to be like a wine, like a normal wine.
Like a normal wine, instead of like, oh, this is liquor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is liquor.
Mm-hmm. I guess I feel like this is the first time, well, I don't actually think that's true. I was going to say this is the first time we've had an alcohol that we've actively disliked. But I think it's more of like our expectations were wrong.
I feel like there has to have been another alcohol that I haven't liked before.
I think there was, yeah.
Like,
I think there was. I just can't remember what it is.
It's just not memorable.
Yeah, you're not much of an alcohol person
not good
to begin with, even though we have an alcohol-based podcast.
very much so.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the furthest from my normals, is what I'll say.
I mean, it's not a Guinness, so like it's got to be bad, right?
Oh yeah, yes, very much so.
All right.
Okay. So, just to give you a quick kind of recap of what happened in 2023 as we go into 2024. But in 2023, we had 10 sets, 25 precons, 392 new commanders, and 1,917 new legal cards, which includes that 392 commanders. We had All Will Be One, March of the Machine, and March of the Machine Aftermath. We had the Lord of the Rings, Commander Masters, the Wilds of Eldraine, Doctor Who, the Holiday Bundle for Lord of the Rings, and Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Some of the other major events that happened was the introduction of the Ambassador program. There was some controversies around Commander Masters. Rachel Weeks became a new permanent host for the Command Zone. During the time of March of the Machine and a lot of the aftermath stuff, there were some leaks, and the Pinkertons got involved with the one who leaked stuff. Lorcana came out, and there were a bunch of layoffs. So, already a pretty packed year. And, yeah, that's... Oh, Dominaria, remastered? Or... The Dominaria reprint set was also the first thing that year.
Yeah, like I think we have it in our notes, like Dominaria Remastered came out in like January for the sets of this year.
Yes, because that kind of has been a trend that they're trying to set for, I want to say, like the beginning of the year every year now. Because the first thing that we have to talk about for 2024 is Ravnica Remastered. So, this idea is just a reprint only set, and the cards that are in this set are taken from any set that was done on Ravnica. So, you got Cyclonic Rift, that was originally from Ravnica. You have the Shocklands, Liliana Dreadhorde General, Udvara Hellkite, Bruvok, the Grand Delinquent. I know I said that wrong. Guardian Project, Protean Hulk, Dark Confidant, Deathrite Shaman, Hellkite Tyrant, Cryptcast, Court of Calling, Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, and a couple others. But this was a reprint only set. They did some anime art. They did some like collector, like 1 out of 500 serialized cards. Yeah, so that kicked off earlier this year, and it was... I felt like it was pretty big. Like, people were really into it.
Yeah, I'd say people were very much in
Shockland reprints
yeah, that was
are good.
The main thing I remember is the Shockland reprints, because, you know, this is Commander. Shocklands are probably one of the most powerful cycles of lands, and the fact that they're all getting reprinted, whether they're like as a premium card or as like a non-premium card, like it just helps lower the price. And like that's a big deal. Like mana bases tend to be like easily pretty expensive part of a commander deck, so that was like the big deal. But like you said earlier, there's tons of reprints. Generally speaking, we're very like positive about like full reprint sets because they just help keep down the price of the game and in theory keep the game affordable.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit of a mixed reaction from the fan base, as you also said earlier, regarding anime arts. Some people really like them, some people really don't like them, some people are in the middle, as well as the whole like serialization of cards, like, oh, there's only 500 of this, like this card, and it says so, like it's printed on the card. Those I think are like a little bit less liked by the player base, and yet I know there's also a section of the player base that, like, when they open them, as I've talked to a number of people, like, oh, I opened like this serialized version of this card, and like I'm never gonna forget that moment. And it's like I can't deny those people that feeling of like a really special, powerful moment. So it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle about that too.
Yeah, I feel like it's cool on occasion, but I'm glad that it didn't like continue with every set to the degree that it was with Ravnica Remastered. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I understand that this game has a collectability aspect, but I don't think it's quite necessary for every set that we do, you know?
Right. All right, would you like to move on to the next set, which I can talk about?
Yeah, so, I mean, speaking of Ravnica, where do we go first?
Next up, we have Murders at Karlov Manor, apparently a set name that everybody, like, messes up. So that's why I'm reading off of the notes. Everyone thinks it's, like, Soren Markov or something. Anyways, so we have this set, and it's all about, I don't know, the Markov Manor, and, like, isn't this the one that's about the wedding between Soren and Elvia Voldaren?
Is that what this set is?
I'm thinking that.
No, that's what you're mixing it up with.
Damn it.
This is the murder mystery set.
Oh, right, because it's in conjunction with the Clues.
Where Teysa...
Like the Clue set. They also did that crossover
right,
because Hasbro owns Clue. Oh, yeah.
Right.
There's so many goddamn sets.
Yes.
Sorry.
It really doesn't help Karlov and Markov being so similar.
I did the mistake. I did it.
Yep. Well, you said the correct thing. You just mixed up the plot.
God damn it. Anyways, this has 34 new commanders, and as per usual, every main set also has 4 new commander decks, as well as some new commander cards. So for the main set, the top commanders were Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Remember, it's that wolf that has Vigilance and Trample and Ward 3, so it's really hard to target and get rid of. And then it like gives +1/+1 counters to like each of your creatures, and then like you draw cards equal to like the number of wolves you play. So like people were playing like not so much all wolves, but like pretty much an elf ball deck in Naya colors, and that was a huge mess. Like everyone for a period of time was like, please ban Voja, and like this is ridiculous. And like people were critiquing Ward as an ability in general, like Ward 3 and Ward 4 like basically hexproof, and started that whole I don't want to say debate, but like huge talking point within the community, which has since been heard by Wizards of the Coast, and they're reevaluating Ward. Like I think Gavin Very made a whole video on it on his Good Morning Magic channel. Go watch that. Continuing on, the next most popular one was Judith Carnage Connoisseur. It's that 5-mana Rakdos human shaman that basically gives your instants and sorceries Death Touch and Lifelink, or you can create 2/2 imps that then deal damage when they die. Oh, there's also Massacre Girl, known killer. Like everybody seems to really like the character of Massacre Girl, and whether it was in the 99 or as a commander, that one was pretty popular. And then the 4th most popular commander from this set was Ansrag the Quake Mole. It's that 4-mana Gruul Mole God that everyone was really liking the activated ability that was like 7 mana. Yeah, 7 mana. And like it has to do with blocking and attacking, and people figured out like cool things you can do with it. Super cool. That's just the top 4. I'm not going to read all of them. I will say it was a pretty quick drop off. Like Voja has like, according to EDHRec.com, 11,000 decks, and then like the Mole God is only like 3,500. So it was a pretty quick drop off. And alongside that, remember, you have the commander decks, which I think all of these are I mean, someone's gonna hate me. They're all kind of forgettable. Like the most popular one was Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, which was the 3-mana Dimir vampire detective that, like, whenever you surveilled, you put a +1/+1 counter on them. It had flying and vigilance. It's a 1/3. At the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than its power to the graveyard to battlefield with a finality counter. All these are kind of forgettable. What would you say to that guy? Am I wrong or right about that? It has 5,000 decks.
I mean, I feel like some of these numbers are a little inflated only because since they're also the face commanders, you know, they get kind of put into systems as commander decks in general. So these will always be like a little higher than probably what's actually out there because people just made a deck or that just basically copied the
it's
deck
a whole
list.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
So
to like non-veteran players, it's sort of the commander precon effect is kind of what it's called. Just like, as you said, everyone just like if they make a deck list online, which is what EDH Rec is scraping online data for, it's probably like a copy and paste, and then people are tweaking it slightly. So there's a bit of a slight bias to, like, it's probably a higher popularity than it actually is.
Yeah, very much. So are they forgettable? I tend to think
at least the commander ones. The main set, no.
Just because also with every... Yeah, the main set was pretty cool. I think the trend that we'll see or have been seeing with these commander decks is, one, now there's 4 per every set. And the decks are now geared towards more specific strategies, which I think is good for the sake of the health and not trying to make everything feel like, oh, this is just the new best Dimir commander. Oh, this is just the new best Boros commander. All of them kind of do something more unique, and it hits more niches, but you know, you're not going to see those as often because they only speak to certain players more.
Absolutely.
So, are they forgettable? They're not. And none of them are like stand out stronger than any of the others. That's the other thing. It's like no one dominates. Like Voja is probably the standout commander from the set because of how strong it is.
Yeah, like when I think of the set, I like this is one of the first. That's one of the first cards I think about it from a commander perspective. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the top 4-ish cards from the set were Demand Answers, the Surveillance Cycle, Archdruid's Charm, and War Leader's Call. I think overall, like, this set was meh. I don't think anyone was like... I think people were kind of like, this isn't Ravnica so much. It is one of the first background sets that they have done where it's a plane we know, but they just use it as the backdrop basically for a different plot. Like Lost Caverns of Ixalan was that. This is that. So people were, I think, a little upset that we weren't doing like traditional Ravnica, and this just could have been, you know, a different place.
Yeah. I feel that. I definitely heard some commotion in the community where they're like, okay, this is the, I don't know, 6th time we've gone to Ravnica. It's now starting to, for some people, they claim that it's losing its charm. Yeah, I think it's, that's also, but I think it's mostly what you said because it was a backdrop set where like, oh, these designs didn't necessarily need to come from Ravnica. But overall, I'd say it was an overall solid set. I don't think it was, I think it's right in the middle. Had some good commander cards and had some good 99 cards.
Yeah. All right, next up we have the Fallout commander decks, which came out in March. So this was a set of 4 decks around a Universes Beyond theme. Between these 4 decks, we got 52 new commanders. The top ones being the Wise Mothman, Mr. House, President and CEO, Caesar, Legion's Emperor, and Dogmeat Ever Loyal. So 3 out of those 4 that I just said are the face commanders of the decks. So of course they're going to have a little bit higher of a like bias. We got a decent number of new cards. I think there's probably like between 30 to 40 new cards per deck. So we got this enemy cycle of lands where it's like for 1 mana it adds 2 colors. I forget what that's called. No, because the filter ones are where it's like a hybrid. This one was just like kind of tap. Gavin also made a video on this, so you know, go watch that, I guess. There's the Nuka-Cola vending machine, Power Fist, Silver Shroud costume. I'm saying a lot of things that are Fallout references, but it's kind of like, unless if you're really into Fallout, you probably weren't paying too much attention to this set.
This was a Universes Beyond set. It tends to be where if you're a dedicated like solo, unless you know the other IP, you probably don't know anything about this. Like from my perspective, I've never played Fallout. I don't know anything about it. So like you mentioned all these cards, and like I only know about like Mothman because I played against it at my LGS. I only know about Dogmeat because I played against it at my LGS. Otherwise, I literally know nothing about this. I know about the enemy lands, but I don't know what Power Fist does. I don't know what Silver Shroud costume is, and like I'd have to look them up. Yeah, this is sort of a growing trend of full sets being Universes Beyond. That is going to trend towards something we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. On a side note, a positive thing I can say about this is it got people excited about energy counters again. Got people thinking about Kaladesh again, and whether buying some of those cards is worth it.
Yeah.
That's it, though. That's all I got to say positively about it.
All right, what's next?
It was Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which came out around April. So still kind of at the beginning half of the year. And it also accompanied with the Big Score, which is... How would you describe the Big Score? It's almost like a complimentary side set that's a small mini set with this. Is it like premium cards? How would you describe the Big Score?
It was meant to be what Aftermath was. It was a small set that they were going to do in addition to Outlaws of Thunder Junction. After seeing how poorly Thunder Junction or Aftermath did, they scraped some of the cards in the Big Score and made it like a bonus sheet, is what I would say. So it's similar to when we got like the Legends in March of the Machine, or the Mystical Archive, I think is actually the best comp, where it is just a bonus card that you can get on occasion. They were designed to be a little more powerful than intended. Nothing like, I wouldn't say there was anything from there that was like crazy, at least for Commander, but these were like a little bit stronger, and they took, I'd say 30 cards. There were a few reprints in there too, so it wasn't like all
and then
new
don't
stuff.
forget, in addition to all this, there's the typical 4 Commander decks. So in total there's like 51. Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot.
There were 51 new Commanders, and the top 4 were the new Obeka Splitter of Seconds. It's the 4-mana Grixis Obeka that when she deals combat damage to a player, you get an additional upkeep step after this phase. So you're basically getting additional upkeep triggers mixed with combat. That one was pretty popular at like 9,000 decks according to EDH Rec. The next one was the new Gitrog. This one was Gitrog Ravenous Ride. I haven't seen this one as much. The popularity drops down pretty quick. Like Obeka was at 9,000, then this new Gitrog was at 4,000. Also at about 4,000 is Roxanne Starfall Savant, which is a 5-mana Gruul cat druid that cares about like meteors and like that are counting as artifact tokens that add mana and like deal damage. It's a weird one. And then there's also like Kellen the Kid, which is at 3,500 decks. It's Bant. It's a human fairy rogue. People have talked about how it's kind of powerful, but despite how powerful it is, it's like, oh, you could do that with other decks already, so it's not really doing anything new. So people weren't really interested in Kellen, I'd argue. Again, there were more commanders, but like those are the top 4 most like notable ones. So I don't think the main set commanders were as memorable. Would you push back on that guy, or would you say that's accurate? Because I feel like the commander decks were arguably like equal, or if not more memorable.
I think they were more memorable for sure. You had like Stella, who was, I think, in contention to be a very strong CEDH commander. Felix 5 Boots, who was just kind of like a fun 5 legs.
It looks like the Mimeoplasm if he had more fun with boots and fashion.
Yeah, I think the commander deck cards or the commanders from the commander decks were more notable than most of the, because there was just also so many that came out in the main set.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I liked the 99 of this set a bit more, though. Like some of the top cards were Insatiable Avarice, Return the Favor, Lava Spur Boots, and The Great Train Heist. I think among these, at least for me personally, Lava Spur Boots is the most notable because it's like, oh, it's another pair of Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves. And like obviously they're less powerful because it's not Hexproof or Shroud. It's Ward 1, which is like not as powerful. However, it's still granting haste and a little bit of targeted spot removal protection. So yeah, it's less powerful, but like I'm good with that. I'm good with like a third copy of quote unquote boots that's less powerful.
It's fun, it's flavorful. You know, it's not kind of like the Arcane Signet type of design where it's now going to be in every commander deck, but if you have an equipment type commander, it certainly is not a bad option to consider.
What did you kind of think of the spree mechanic? You know, every main set has like these new mechanics that come out, and oftentimes they aren't really relevant to commander, but what did you think of spree and saddle?
I mean, spree was the big mechanic from this set. It was interesting. The way that it plays is interesting, but I don't think there's any spree cards that I got and have been like, oh yeah, this has been so strong in my deck.
Mm-hmm.
So it was okay.
Would you like to talk about
What do you think?
I liked spree. It was kind of reminds me of like modal cards, but like obviously it has the mana requirement attached to them. I just liked the flexibility. I did think it was fairly well balanced. Like Insatiable Avarice is basically like a tutor or a black draw spell, and both of them were balanced according to their mana cost. And I don't know, I'll talk about it in one of my favorite cards later, but it led to design, which I liked it. It gave you some good cards.
All right.
You should talk about this next set, which is wild.
So, yeah. So now we're in Modern Horizons 3. This is May. We have quite a big drop from, I would say, the last two sets, which had over 50 commanders. This one only had 28. Now that feels a little more normal. We also have the very famous Modern Horizons 3 commander decks, which is just such a weird thing to say. Because none of those cards are modern legal, but they were designed with... I think the idea was to take popular modern strategies and turn them into commander decks. And I think they did a good job there, but it just feels weird, especially for people who are getting into the game, to be like, I bought this and it can't be played in modern? No.
Marketing was a bit confusing. As you said, like Modern Horizons, commander decks, what? And then like the legality of certain cards.
Yeah.
It was just a bit confusing even for enfranchised players, given the name of products. Yeah.
Yep. So some of the top commanders from the set were the Necrobloom. This is the main set first, which is the Landfall, Field of the Dead, Dredge commander. Then you have Nadu, who we'll get into later, but was eventually banned. He was in contention to be one of the strongest commanders in very recent history.
Guy, do you remember when we did the set review and we talked about this card?
Yeah. And
yeah,
we said the correct thing and it came true.
Yeah, I vividly remember. I vividly remember this, where we were talking about all these powerful cards that were going to go in the 99 of like commander decks, and we were like, we're actually fine with that. The one card we're not okay with, Nadu. It is just a nightmare in terms of the way they chose to word and template the text of this card. It is terrible design. And lo and behold, here we are.
Yep.
We called it.
So next was Arna Kennerud, Sky Captain, who I'm definitely potentially said that wrong. And then the last top four was Kudo, King Among Bears, who was kind of
everyone was afraid because, oh my gosh, you're going to play Elish Norn, the original one in the 99, and no one's going to be able to play creatures, and it's going to be broken, and you need to ban Kudo.
Yeah. But it's fine. Then you have the four commander decks, which were around Eldrazi, Simic Good Stuff, Energy, and then Jund Graveyard. So you had like Ulalek, Omo, Queen of Asuva, Azlask, another Eldrazi, and Satya, Aether Flux Genius. So we got a good mix.
Yeah, I heard mixed things about whether, like, if you liked Eldrazi, how you felt about these new Eldrazi commanders. Some people liked it, some people didn't, based on like usually the color identity or lack thereof.
Yeah. Yep. We got a good number of cycles in this set too that I think will kind of become almost staples for the coming years. We had the new sets of modal double face lands.
Oh yes.
Where some could come in untapped. So like Sink into Stupor, Fell to Profane. We got some really strong lands like Shifting Woodland, Urza's Cave. Overall, Modern Horizons felt like a general good power boost in comparison to what we got so far with Murders at Karlov, Outlaws, Fallout.
Yeah. I know everyone, generally from the community, everyone was pretty like it's that feeling of being excited and nervous. Like you're excited because you're gonna get all these cool cards that are gonna pay homage to old Magic, but at the same time you're nervous because you're worried something's gonna be overpowered and broken. And we did get that in the form of Nadu, and it was kind of an issue mostly for non-commander formats. Generally speaking, like Nadu was still kind of an issue in Commander, but to a lesser degree, I'd argue. But overall, led to a lot of cool cards in Commander that we were pretty happy with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was one of the sets that I was most looking forward to when we began the year. And definitely not disappointed. Looking forward to Modern Horizons 4 whenever that comes out.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up we have Assassin's Creed, another Universes Beyond set.
I know this is the one that you've been dying to talk about, Blake.
Oh, yes, I've been dying to talk about it because I have pretty much nothing to say. Because if I'm being honest, I kind of just ignored this set because I don't care about Universes Beyond products. Anyways, I'm going to now spend the next few minutes pretending like I know what this set is. So, it had 37 new commanders, and it had 0 commander decks because it basically was a commander exclusive product, and I know some people kind of had issue with that from what I heard.
It actually is modern legal too.
Oh yeah. So
surprising.
Yeah, again, it's one of those classic, like, what even is in a product these days? It's so complicated, none of us understand. Wizards makes these videos explaining products and like different like boosters, and nobody understands anyway. Anywho, the top commanders are commanders I don't recognize, but the top one is 8,000 decks, and it is people are gonna roast me alive. I've never played these games either. Ezio, Auditore da Firenze.
That was really good, actually.
It is only 2 mana. It's a mono black commander. Human assassin, go figure. It has menace. Spells you cast have 4 running black, which is actually kind of good in Commander. As a reminder, you may cast a spell for its 4 running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player, so it basically is making your spells cheaper. And so this one was pretty popular. I've also heard the mono red one, the Alexio, Deimos of Cosmos, was pretty popular. It's kind of like another slicer, which is in the mono red transformer, constant attacking and killing people with Voltron damage. So these are all been pretty popular. Mostly the mono black one, Ezio, at 8,000 decks, and then there's a kind of a quick drop off, 4,000, 2,000, etc. Oddly enough, like Cleopatra is now a Commander card. That's right, Cleopatra, the historical figure, as well as Leonardo da Vinci. Oh god.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing now. Some of the top cards for the 99 were Brotherhood Regalia, Excalibur, Overpowering Attack, and Caducus. Don't know what any of those cards are, but they are the top cards in the 99 from this set. How do you feel, Guy?
I only feel like I know kind of this set a little better than some of the others because I had a friend who was really into it and he wanted to talk to me about it. So I helped build him a commander deck with a lot of these cards. Yeah. But from like was there anything I wanted from this set? No. It was all very assassin typal matters. I didn't care for any of the I know we just said it was not designed for Commander and Modern in mind, but it did feel in general kind of like a weaker set. And it was a smaller set too. I think only 130 cards maybe, just because it was meant to be kind of what Aftermath was, a mini set. But I think that they found that these have been a little less popular. So we'll probably not see as many going forward.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, I did lie. There was one thing I heard about this set, and that the fact that there was a wording misprint, and instead of saying bounty counter, it said bounty county. I think that was on Shay Cormac, and that's the only thing I know about that set, because bounty county is funny.
It is. You're right. That did happen. All right. Moving right along into July, we have Bloomborough. So this is a completely new plane we have not been to before. We have 34 commanders from this set, 4 commander decks. The top 4 commanders were Balin the Haymaker, which is a Tokens Matter commander. Yigra, Eater of All, which is an elemental Golgari Food Matters commander. We have Wicked the World Mind, who I think is like a rat typo type deck, but it is 3 colors, so it allows for like all the rats. And then you have Glarb, Calamity's Augur, who is a frog noble, and it's kind of a Sultai lands and high mana value type deck.
And everyone was talking about whether Glarb is cooler or what's it called, like the other Sultai banana chair.
Oh yeah. I forget his name, but I know who you're talking about.
That was a fun little thing, because they both like to sit dramatically in their thrones.
Yep. And then we had the 4 commander decks, and we had Mrs. Bumbleflower, who is a group hug Bant commander. Flubs the Fool, who was a commander promo. Huh?
Tassiger was the name.
Tassiger. Yes, that is. Yep. You have Bello, Bard of the Brambles, who is an elemental tokens type deck. And Zinnia, Valley's Voice, which is a Just Sky Token Matters type deck. So, overall, I think people were really into this set, and I will say, like, I was actually more pleased with the set than I thought I was going to be. The top cards were 3 Tree City, Patchwork Banner, Dawn's Truce, and Caretaker's Talent, along with some of the cards from the commander decks being Pollywood Prodigy, Agate Instigator, 20-Toed Toad, Jacked Rabbit. Tempt with Bunnies is actually one of my favorite cards too. I like that card. And I like Agate Instigator too. Actually, those are 2 of my favorite cards. But yeah, I think a lot of people like this just because majority of it is like cute animals. It almost felt like Ravnica in the sense of each color pair has one animal that they are focused on. So, red-white was mice, black-green was squirrels. So people could identify what they wanted to play. And I think the draft environment was awesome too, because it's like, oh, I'm playing otters, or I'm playing rats, I'm playing squirrels,
Yeah, I think from a larger perspective, a lot of players were satisfied either by this set or the next set, because this set was really cutesy, and if you're like, oh, I only want like dark brooding things, then the next set was for you. And if you're someone who really just wants cute shit, like this set was definitely for you and not the next one. So like it served both ends of the spectrum. So I feel like this was very well received, especially since generally the tone of like the previous sets of the year were like mid to darker tones. People really, I think, appreciated having something light and whimsical and cute.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like the meme is, we got a cute set, and then we got this like dark and brooding set that's like right next. Like it's the biggest contrast of tone between sets that they've done in quite a while.
At least for like enfranchised players, because WotC releases like their set names and like some information like almost a year ahead of when they are to be released to the public, there wasn't like this severe tonal whiplash and like negative feedback. People saw it coming, so they knew like, all right, I'm more of someone who likes darker things, so I'm gonna like Dustborn more. Oh, I like lighter, cutesier things, so I'm gonna like Bloomburrow more. So everyone knew what to expect going in to the later half of this year, and no one was like super outraged by it. All right, so what is Dustborn? It came out in September. It had 27 new commanders, and of course the 4 corresponding commander decks. Apparently, the top 4 commanders from this set, again, this is the spooky haunted house world. The number 1 is the, how do I pronounce this? Arabella, Abandoned Doll. 2 mana Boros toy. It's the like spoof of Annabelle, the movie. And then there's Marina Vendrell, the 5-colored enchantment / room matters deck. Then there's the Jolly Balloon Man, which is another Boros commander at 3 mana value. And Human Clown. It's the art of the dude blowing air into like heads, and it's kind of very dark in tone. It's hasty, and it gives other tokens haste. You can do some silly things with it. Then the 4th most popular main set commander was the Mind Skinner. It's that blue 3 mana nightmare, like crab clawed looking thing that can't be blocked. It's a 1/10, or sorry, it's a 10/1, and it says instead of dealing damage, you mill cards. And then of course, I'd say this one is pretty memorable. That might be a bias though, because here we are recording at the end of the year, and Dustborn came out somewhat recently. I think also a reason it's a little bit biased is because the numbers are showing like the most popular main set commander only has 5,000 decks, whereas like compared to other sets it's like 13,000 or 9,000. So that also could be a factor of like these have been out in the hands of players less, so it's just going to be a matter of time before the top 4 get to those numbers. But I don't know, for me, like this was kind of a memorable set in terms of its tone, in terms of like the idea behind the planes. So we'll see as time goes on. I'd say the corresponding commander decks were very popular. The number 1 is the Rakdos 4 mana Valgavoth, that Elder Demon Moth dude, which has like flying, ward, pay 2 life. Whenever an opponent loses life for the first time, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then you draw a card. So it's like this creature that like gets bigger and bigger as you draw cards. Well, that's not to love. Then that one's at like 7,000 decks. And then next up there's like Aminatu, the Veil Piercer. So like we've seen Aminatu as a planeswalker, and now here we see her as a human wizard legendary creature. She's still Esper colors. At the beginning of your upkeep, you surveil 2, and then basically your enchantment spells have Miracle, which is really cool. Then we have Zimone, Mystery Unraveler, 4 mana Simic human wizard card that has like landfall ability that coincides with like prime numbers. Oh, sorry, I was misreading. That's the other Zimone. There's like 2 Zimones. This one has a different landfall ability. And then the 4th most popular one is the Rendmaw Creaking Nest. It is a 5 mana Golgari Scarecrow that like makes crows. And yeah, there's a bunch of other like commanders that go along with it, like the Master of Keys and the Lord of Pain and Winter. And overall, it was a pretty cool set. In terms of like top cards, there was like Withering Torment, Enduring Vitality, all these nightmare creatures, Untimely Malfunction, Razorkeen Needlehead. That one was pretty popular because it punishes draw, which is just so notorious in Commander. Guy, what did you think of this set overall?
I wasn't going into this set thinking I was gonna like a lot of cards, but I also think that this pleasantly surprised me in terms of the number of cards that I actually ended up putting into my decks. And I even built the Wandering Rescuer, who isn't among the top 8 of new commanders here, but it was a deck that I was like, I have struggled with my mono white deck for a while. I'd like to have something that I think plays a little better. So I kind of took that apart and made her instead. So that's been going pretty good. So I think Duskmourn is my surprise. A lot of good stuff that I like.
And what did you think of the darker tone of the set?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I know a lot of people were upset about kind of like the ties to pop culture that are a little less Magic, but I feel it's kind of baby steps. We're doing a space theme set next year, so I feel like that this is only just a introduction to kind of new ideas into Magic. I feel that if we just kind of kept the same themes all the time, it gets a little boring. So seeing stuff like this is really interesting, and it still feels like Magic. So I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it overall. I know what you mean, where like, oh, people are wearing sneakers and they have like, there's cheerleaders, and it definitely feels
there's cheerleaders,
more worldsy rather than high fantasy. And I get that. At the same time, it's like you got to play into the core source material, and like it's gonna bleed over inevitably a little bit to elements that aren't necessarily high fantasy. And there's definitely a element of where like this old technology of like these scanners like are like unreliable and could be a source of like fear in and of themselves if they ever malfunction. So there's some nuance to it. So I won't go into that right now, but I can forgive these small little things. They are not big issues for me.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like keeping Magic within a realm of my comfort instead of kind of going to places that we'll talk about in a little bit. As in, kind of right now. So, Duskmourn is the last set of the year. No, actually, I totally forgot the next set. But in between Duskmourn and the next set, actually, there was a Marvel's Secret Lair drop, and we're only calling this one out because there were 5 mechanically unique cards that were only available in this drop. They've confirmed that there will be another time for you to get these cards in the future, but not necessarily with this art. So we got Black Panther, Storm, Captain America, Iron Man, and Wolverine as 5 new face commanders. I'm not gonna read what each of them do, but people were upset that they weren't able to get them right away. There were some issues with the drop itself, but I think in the future, when these cards become more available, that will, help lessen some of the tension.
So to clarify, this was a pretty highly anticipated Secret Lair drop, just because, like, Marvel is a pretty big, like, enterprise, and so, like, these characters are pretty well known in, like, pop culture, and people were having trouble, like, being in the wait list for hours and still not getting the product, right?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be able to get actually all the cards, but there was a lot of issues with, like, I was in line and then it said, hey, the site's down, we'll work our best to get it back up and running. And then people were like, "Oh well, do I leave? Do I come back?" Like,
so you were part of the
do?
confusion. You were part of that group.
So I was part of, I mean, I didn't crash the website myself, but
no, you were the straw that broke the camel's back, guy. You are the problem to this whole thing.
Yeah, it is me. I'm sorry. I just was greedy and wanted my cards.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Yep. All right. So just kind of mentioning that here because it's, some new commanders, but we got one more big set, which I'm just gonna talk about now, which is Foundations. This was kind of a surprise that we didn't know was going to be here. But Foundations is kind of the new core set. It is a product that they're going to allow into Standard for the next 5 years. So we got 12 new commanders from this set. We also got a Foundations Jumpstart, which had 27 new commanders. So, yeah. Top commanders from the main set were Niv Mizzet, Tiny Bones, Loot, Alesha, and Koma. And then we have Shrufus, Everith, Selinza, Ophelia, Gornog as the top from Jumpstart. None of these have, like, high number of decks yet, just because, like, we're recording this in November. We're doing this a little early, and these cards have not been out in the wild long enough for them to have accumulated as many decks as some of the previous cards that we talked about. So
yeah, I think they've been out for like 10 days or so. So keep that in mind with these numbers.
Right. So time will tell, and maybe next year when we do our 2025 recap, like, we'll kind of be able to give some more thoughts on Jumpstart and how that played out. Foundations in general, sorry. Some of the top cards from the set were Helpful Hunter, Bloodthirsty Conqueror, Heir Apparent, Twin Flame Tyrant, Blasphemous Edict. That's from the main set. And then you have, like, Scythe Cat Cub, Generous Pup, Woodland Liege, and Griggling Grub from the Jumpstart set. So that kind of rounds out all the sets that happen throughout the year.
Yeah, I want to talk about Foundations a little bit more. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, guy. Like, Foundations is, like, as you said, sort of a core set, but it's also geared mostly towards, like, being friendly to new players, try and get, like, new players possibly into the game, right? Like, they're more basic cards and templating and design.
Yeah, there's nothing overly complicated. There weren't any new mechanics. It's meant to be a introductory set that does have powerful cards and can appeal to, all Magic players, but with the idea that this is the most introductory, friendly way to get into the game.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I just want to double check on that. And I also just kind of want to take a temperature of the room. As we discussed, this set just came out about 10 days ago, so I acknowledge the fact that what I'm about to say could still be part of the like classic hype train of like, oh, this is the latest set, so this is what everyone's like super hyped about, and then like, I don't know, half a year goes by and you're like, what even happened? But like, I can say with a reasonably like cool head that like I was pleasantly surprised with how good Foundations was. I knew that this was coming up at the very end of 2024, but I was like pleasantly surprised by like how many cards I was like, oh, I want this for that deck. Oh, I want this for that deck. Oh, that's just like a good effect in general. Oh, I want to buy that. I want to buy that. I want to buy that. Cards that were like powerful, but like well costed and nothing overpowered. And I was like, oh, dang, this is actually like I wasn't expecting to like this set. I thought that this was going to be a set I was going to like easily like look at and be able to forget and like move on. But no, this is actually a pretty good set.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've been a little iffy on core sets before, but I think this really, I think, yeah, this has been the best core set that we've seen.
It also has just like really powerful cards like Blasphemous Edict. Like, I can't believe they made a black version of Blasphemous Act, and it's like in a core set. Yeah,
in a way it feels like Modern Horizons 3, but more of a standard Horizons, you know? Like, generally powerful cards made for the format that they're in. We also got like a ton of good reprints in this set, like Doubling Seasons in here, Omniscience is in here, Lyra Dawnbringer's in here. Like, I know that there was a decent number of these because half of it is made for new players. But yeah, Rise of the Dark Realms, Liliana Dreadhorde General. So
on that note, because there were reprints, like I feel like you really had to pay attention to this set, because here are characters that we've known for years, and we're seeing again that have new effects. Like, we got a Rabo, but instead it's a mono white commander that is an anthem for your cats, and then like makes additional cat tokens when you play cats. You got like another Niv Mizzet. I think this is like the 6th or 7th Niv Mizzet. You got like another Coma, not just the original. You've got another Tiny Bones. You've got another Lesha. You've got another Loot. You've got another Alenda, another Zimone, another Kaikar. Like, there's just so many like characters that we know from previous commanders that are now getting new cards. So, like, I feel like I was like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that there was like a new Alenda. Like, I almost overlooked it. Another aspect I want to talk about before moving on, and I want your input, is the Foundation Jumpstart cards. You know, we're looking at a screenshot on our notes right now, and they are all, for lack of better terminology, anime arts.
Yep.
It's just a stylistic choice that you can very obviously tell. Now, some people, again, positive, negative, neutral. That was another sort of issue with this set. I think it's one of the only, I don't even want to say negative, but it's the only, like, I don't even want to say controversy, but like point of tension within the community regarding this. Like, again, I sort of feel like this. We're like, oh, it doesn't feel as in-universe is the terminology I'm going to use. It doesn't feel very in-universe Magic to me.
Yeah, it's certainly a choice. And mainly because you have the anime art and only the anime art. where they have been introducing more anime art variants to cards.
But they're as alternatives.
But they always do have... Yeah, but as alternatives. This time there's no alternative. Yeah. So it is kind of like forcing you to play with that card in this style, and yeah. I guess we'll see if they ever reprint these.
I love Shrufus, Sprout Sire. Like, he's this cute little dude, but also I kind of like a Magic-esque version of him.
I mean, I feel like he's one of the least egregious of the anime. Yeah.
Ophelia doesn't even look like a Gorgon. I'm sorry.
But I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
He's not got anime titties, at least.
Yeah. Oh, what was the card? Rev Tithe Extractor? I don't think it's necessarily because... I don't think it's necessarily because of Commander. I think it was for another format that it spiked a bunch in price, but like that's a really pricey card. I think as a better example of the point I'm trying to make, Duanus Elvish Archdruid. It's a legendary creature elf druid. It's a 3/3 elves you control have. When this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This ability triggers only once each turn. Like, that's just a really powerful effect for elf ball decks. There's tons of ways to tap and untap your elves, and like that's just a really powerful effect. And like, it's only available in anime art style. Like, and I don't want to come across as a hater. Like, part of me is like, oh, that's super cute. Like, there's one card like where it's like this girl holding like a jellyfish, and it's really cute. I don't want to come off as like a complete hater, but at the same time, it's like these are the only printings. Like, there's no Magic-esque version, which is what I prefer.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, let's move on.
All right. Well, I mean, that concludes all the sets for the year. So, how many new commanders did we get? For comparison, we got 392 in 2023. Based on my math, we have 313 new commanders for 2024. So there are 80 less. That's actually a pretty big drop. In terms of commander decks, we had 25 for 2023, and for 2024, we have 24. So about the same, one less. So yeah.
How do you feel about those numbers?
I know a lot of people have... I mean, I think it's just kind of the norm that we have to settle into, especially with it being like the last couple years we have seen the increase. So if we're getting 300 new commanders every year now, okay, I have set my expectations. I think I'd be like more concerned if next year we have 500 new commanders, and just watch me like eat that, basically.
Yeah, I still think what was it, Commander Legends, when they introduced like more partner pairings, I think that was the most like, oh my god, the possibilities are so endless. Like, my mind hurts like trying to comprehend all the commanders that came out that year. That was the worst one, I'd say.
I mean, I feel like even then that one didn't have, that year wasn't as, we'd have to go back and check, I guess, but I feel like that year was not as much as some of the more previous years. It just, we had a lot at once. That was kind of like the introduction to, you're now going to get a lot of commanders every year.
So that's been the trend, is like, it's almost been like the benchmark of like, each year, how many commanders do you have? Do you have 365? Like, pretty much a commander every single day? Is it above that mark or less than that mark? Last year was above that at 392, as you said. And this year it's 313, which is still a lot, but like, I think you and I can both like look back at this year and be like, all right, we were able to more or less comprehend everything that happened, instead of being like, it's January, punched in the head. Oh, it's December, what just happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of like how many new commander decks, it's pretty much the same number as last year of 2024 or 2023, sorry. And like that's kind of to be expected. Like that seems like the new formula that they're going with, like 4 new commander decks every set. The number of sets more or less hasn't really changed, so like that number is consistent. And I feel like that's the new normal that we are now kind of just used to.
Yeah, and I think, again, if we're kind of sticking to that number, okay, that's fine. I think the nice thing that I've mentioned earlier in this set was a lot of the commander decks this year felt like they were more specific in what they were designed to be. Like, we got a group slug deck, we got 2 energy decks, we got Eldrazi, things that we haven't had before that do feel more unique rather than just generic spell slinging matters or land. You know, the way that they did it for each of these decks doesn't homogenize any one strategy.
Yes, which I appreciate.
Yep. All right. So this year, so we do this every year too. We kind of pick like what are some of the strongest cards for the 99 and some of the strongest commanders as well. Some of the nominations that I picked for strongest 99 are 3 Tree City, which is like a Nykthos legendary land, but for type decks that came out in Bloomborough. We have the Boots from Outlaws. We have the Surveil lands, Duskmourn lands. We have the Flare Cycle from Modern Horizons 3, which was a free cycle of cards. And then we have the Moto Double Face land creatures and Moto Double Face sorcery instants as well. Any of those stick out to you as particularly strong, Blake, or what are your thoughts? If I missed something.
I think these are all good picks that you chose. I'd say, like, some people may be listening and think, oh, that's not that flashy, but we've been doing this enough years, and the lesson that I've learned is, like, never underestimate the power of lands, which I have done, and I have paid the price. Like, the fact that we got, like, these modal double-faced cards, like, that are creatures or sorceries or instants, that's powerful. The fact that we got these Duskmourn lands, that's powerful. The fact that we got these Surveil lands, powerful. 3 Tree City, which is, like, quote-unquote a less powerful Nykthos, like, it's still a powerful ass card. And even though Lava Spur Boots is, like, 3rd place in the, like, microcosm of, like, Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, it's still a strong ass card. I mean, even though the Flare Cycle, compared to previous Modern Horizons cycles, which were busted as fuck, and, like, other cycles such as, like, Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting Swat, even though the Flare Cycle is arguably not as powerful, it's still strong as hell. Like, there's a reason, like, Rogside decks play that red flare so much, and I still see the other flares every once in a while. So maybe these cards in Strongest 99, some people could say they're not the flashiest. Like, oh, it's not Chthonian Nightmare, but honestly, this year, what have I seen more of and, like, ultimately led to synergy and kicking my ass and winning? It's not the Chthonian Nightmares. It's all these lands. It's all these, like, just, like, base, like, floor-wise, medium to high cards. Like, the floor on Lava Spur Boots is still medium to high. The floor on these Flare Cycles is still medium to high. So that's my small mini rant.
I agree. And I like this too because I think, in previous years, we've been able to easily point a finger at that's the strongest card. Like, last year when it came time to, like, what's the strongest 99? It's the One Ring. and it's not close.
Yeah, the One Ring,
Like,
Thassa's
it
Oracle,
just was so much
freaking
stronger.
Dockside Extortionist, and look at the problems and all the discourse that have happened from those like clearly distinguished strongest 99 cards. Look at all the problems and headaches that they've created. So like, yeah, I'm excited about like less controversial cards, basically. I think it's indicative and a sign of a healthier format.
I agree. Now that said, strongest commanders. I picked Nadu, who did get banned. We have Voya, Claw of the Conclave. Storm, Force of Nature, who is one of the Marvel cards. And then I picked Niv Mizzet, Visionary, who is from the recent Foundation set, because he can easily combo off with previous versions of himself and can just kind of do like infinite loops. So, of those, I mean, Nadu got banned. I think Voya's probably one of the... like, these are all strong. But again, like, none of them seem... I don't know, like they're going to dominate the casual format so much.
Whenever someone asks the question of like strongest commander, I am inclined to think from more of the CDH, aka the competitive like EDH perspective. And like earlier in the year, like even for a brief period of time, it was like Nadia was one of the quick rising most powerful decks of the format at the time. Then it got banned, so like then that wasn't an issue. And then like the CDH meta has been shaken up due to what we'll talk about later with like recent bannings that came the later half of this year. So like the CDH meta is like changed, and even then it's older commanders that are now risen to the top of CDH perspective. Not even Voja, not even Storm, Force of Nature, not even the Niv Mizzet Visionary. So I think that's kind of indicative of a healthy format as well, where the strongest commanders of a year aren't automatically replacing the like top strongest CDH commanders that have stood the test of time. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So I think you overall chose good ones. Yeah, Voja's always a good one to choose because people were complaining, please ban. Like, I don't know, at least 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of...
Okay. No,
if you have a comment, say it.
No, I was going to move on
so
to best reprints.
I think we are probably in the same mentality of like, you put down allied fetch lands, the medallion cycle, and doubling season. And I think these are great picks. One, because doubling season is just an expensive commander card. It's like a quintessential commander card, quote unquote. The medallion cycle is really important because I don't think up until now it's got a reprint. It's only been in its original printing. And so that's a really huge thing, because making, especially for monocolor decks, like making a certain color of your like spell, like making black spells cost 1 less, or red spells cost 1 less, or blue spells cost 1 less in a monocolor deck, or hell, even like certain 2-color decks. That's just powerful as hell. And then the allied fetch lands, they're fucking fetch lands. Like, the more they're reprinted, the more people can actually play with them. More accessible it is. Overall, a positive. More accessibility generally is a good thing. So, I agree. Allied fetch lands is probably my pick.
Yeah, the medallion cycle actually got reprinted in Commander Masters, but I think with that being such a high price point set,
it wasn't a quote
it
unquote,
kind of turned people
it wasn't
off.
a quote unquote
but
meaningful
it being
reprint.
printed into right, I think it being reprinted in Modern Horizons 3 has really helped drop the price. Like, I think when you look at it now, I'm just going to type in like Ruby Medallion into TCG. I bet it's under...
Yeah, hopefully under 10.
$5.
Oh, that's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, it's
I didn't know.
$379.
That's great.
So,
That's
$379.
great.
So, yeah. Yeah, because I do remember it was getting to the point where a lot of these were,
Yeah,
probably
I mean, I bought, like, I'll
at
say
least
this.
$20.
I bought all of them around when they were each $20. And I can say, honestly, like, I'm glad they got reprinted. People want and need this type of card in Commander. I don't care that I lost money. It's a good thing for the community.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So that's kind of like the best of or the ones that we would say are the best of for the year. And now, before we go into events and controversies, we want to talk about or highlight some of our
This is
favorite
the best
cards.
part of the episode.
So, like, for me, Screaming Nemesis. Yeah. Screaming Nemesis is probably one of, if not my favorite card. You have the Wandering Rescuer, who I said I made my whole new white deck around. Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest, Sunspine Lynx, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, Oscillate Pride, Roller Crusher Ride, and Agate Instigator. I think, yeah, this is... I like to look at my decks and kind of just see how many new cards throughout the year I ended up putting into my decks. And I think, especially at the beginning of the year, it was pretty quiet. Like, I maybe put in like one card per set. But once we got to like Modern Horizons 3, I was like, oh, there's 2 new cards. Oh, there's 3 new cards. Oh, there's 5 new cards. Like, I'm putting into my decks now.
Yeah, I remember talking with you, and yeah, it was definitely like as the year progressed, there were more and more sets that pertain to like what you had and what you wanted to put. I'm sensing a lot of red and white cards here, guy.
There's one green card, Overlord of the Hauntwoods.
Yeah, so I tried...
What are your picks?
Like, obviously I can't get rid of my bias, but like, I try to think about cards in terms of like, what in terms of designs did I like? So like, for example, Massacre Girl, known killer, the mono black Massacre Girl. I like the fact that she has Wither, giving -1/-1 counters. It's sort of a mechanic that we haven't seen in a long time that is seeing support again in the form of Massacre Girl. Because like, we haven't had -1/-1 counter support in a long time. And even if it's in the form of just like one new card, I like that. I like Final Showdown, where it's an instant speed white board wipe. It's the one from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I believe, with Spree. And I'm like, wow, an instant speed white board wipe that's reasonably costed. Like, this is unheard of. So I'm amazed by that. I was also, not specifically Dawn's Truce, but just the whole like gift a card mechanic, where here's all these like white cards that say like, here's an effect, and if you give a card to someone as the spell is resolving, you have this much more powerful effect that happens instead. And I'm just like thinking from a commander's perspective, where at least with Gifts Truce, it's sort of like a heroic intervention, where that's just a super powerful, strong effect that you definitely want. And like giving one player of your choice, one opponent of your choice, like probably the person who's like quote unquote in last place or like third to last place, who's also struggling, perhaps you are struggling too, like, yeah, like I don't care about giving a card. Like, this is an example of like white giving a card to somebody that like isn't actively like detrimental, and like I don't mind giving a card because the effect is so powerful and so good. And this is Dawn's Truce is an example of white getting more and more powerful cards that I like, where it's not over the line, but it's like, okay, now I'm actually starting to take white cards seriously after 3 years of WotC saying that they're gonna make white better for Commander. I'm like, come on, we're almost there. Come on, Final Showdown, Dawn's Truce, you're getting me there. Come on, like, we're getting there. I also like cards like Valley Flood Caller and High Fae Trickster, which are blue creatures that are giving your spells essentially flash. And especially since High Fae Trickster itself has flash, that's just a very powerful effect. Full stop. And I just sort of like the intricate and highly technical gameplay that can arise from cards like that, where like it gives your entire strategy flash. I just think it forces you to be a very smart pilot of your deck. I also like Hazel Brewmaster, because it's one of those cards that, like, at face value, you're like, oh, this card doesn't really do much of anything. But then when you think about it in terms of like another niche card, what's it called? The fucking elf that like puts -1/-1 counters on it to add green mana. And that's the whole point that I'm talking about this card is because like you can use Hazel Brewmaster to exile the elf and like create a food token to put the -1/-1 counters on it, on the food, and then because it's a food it won't die, and so you just create infinite green. And like that's a sort of like niche synergy that I like, where like it's not broken. Yeah, it's a new strategy within like CDH, but like it's not broken. It's not the most powerful thing you could possibly be doing, and I just like that sort of interaction. I also like Doomsday Excruciator. This like I think it's like 6 or 7 like black pips for a demon from Duskmourn, and like it's basically like every player exiles all but the top like 6 cards of their deck, and it's like not powerful like within the commander standards, but like it's just such a cool niche effect. I also like Meathook Massacre 2 because Meathook Massacre 1 was powerful, and Meathook Massacre 2 is also powerful, but also like different in its own unique thing, where it's not just like a sequel ripoff. I also like the flavor because like it is a sequel, which is like known within like the horror genre of Duskmourn, and like the source material to be sort of like, oh, this is so cliche. I also like Inquisitive Glimmer personally because I love enchantments. Fuck all of you. I also like Shifting Woodlands because holy crap, Shifting Woodlands is such a powerful land, and you can do so many tricky things because it's not a tap ability. You can activate it multiple times and do such bullshit. I've died to Shifting Woodlands by good pilots so many times. And that's the end of my list. I'm sorry that took so long.
No, this is the time to be able to gush about the cards that we really like. And, you know, I'm glad that you have like a pretty good arrangement of cards, where I feel like my list was very much curated to like personal benefit for my decks, where you pick some really good cards that just in general are good design. Yeah. Okay, so this is probably the more contentious, and I say one of the big reasons why we do this is to also then go over all the events and controversies that happened this year. So the first thing is AI art, which has been a hot topic for quite a while. In general, not just in Magic, but towards the end of last year, 2023, Wizards released a statement saying that they would not allow for AI art to be used in any of their promotional material, any of the card art. Just basically, they were saying, we will not use this. 2 weeks into 2024... they released some promo material for Ravnica Remasters, and what do you know, but the ad agency that they had hired used some AI art. And Wizards was like, they doubled down first, saying that, nope, we contacted them, they said no. And then after people pushed because of how obvious it was, they were like, hey, we made a mistake. And they corrected and apologized, and they said that they would set better guidelines for the future. I think it's one of those things where, like, okay, you stuck to what you're saying, as in you will not use it for future. This is kind of the time and place where you're learning as a company. Like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt personally. No other issues that I know of have come up since then, so it seems that they're doing better at vetting for this. But it is just kind of funny that it was like, hey, we're not doing this. 2 weeks later, whoops.
Hands in my face. Like, this was just so embarrassing. They're a company that's been around long enough. They should know better. But I get that the topic of AI art, not only within Magic, but AI art within the wider scope of society, wasn't really a talking point until this year. And again, as a reminder, this was early into 2024. So it was definitely at the forefront of societal conversations. And people at that point, like, definitely didn't know, like, even the basics of, like, the typical, like, AI art controversial debate sort of thing. It definitely is sort of funny where, like, they doubled down initially because they initially contacted the ad agency. The ad agency affirmed Wizards of the Coast that it was not AI. And then as the community pushed further because it was quote unquote obvious, like, then the truth came out. And then Wizards, I think, had to make another post, and, like, it was mean for like a month where it's like, well, we made a mistake. And then, like, the rest of the post, but, well, we made a mistake, was definitely mean for like an entire month. And I want to remind everybody that, especially as time moves forward, and unfortunately, as much as AI seems to have stuck around as 2024 has progressed and seems to continue, like, it's forcefully been integrated into, like, a lot of our lives against our will, like, such as Google. Google now has AI overview. That's just a very simple, basic example. There's lots of other aspects of AI being forcefully integrated into our lives as average common people that we do not like. I want to remind everybody that as time goes forward, AI is going to be less recognizable as it gets more refined. And it's not about, like, it looking bad or something looking bad because of its AI generated. I'll remind everybody, from an ethical standpoint, like how it's created, how energy intensive it is, how it is stealing from real world people and exploiting their labor. That is the issue here. It's not so much that AI looks bad. It's never been about that. The core of the issue has always been from an ethical standpoint of stealing human labor and robbing people of their livelihoods. So that's my spiel. We can move on to the next topic.
So this one, I think, really got exacerbated. This one intensified with Modern Horizons 3. There were just a lot of leaks that came out and spoiled the set. And yeah, I feel like there has just been more and more of these instances where somebody gets their hands on packs, somebody, like, quickly goes to the internet, posts them, and then it just kind of ruins the surprise. So especially moving forward, just, try not to engage with that, to help promote that this is not something we want people to be actively trying to do. So many creators have the opportunity to do spoilers and make fun videos, but when a card gets spoiled because of a leak, just for, the sake of, I'm going to be the first one to show this, it kind of ruins that fun.
Yeah, it just sort of, I don't know what's going on in internally at WotC. This seems to happen like every other set, basically. I don't know what's going on. It doesn't seem like Yu-Gi-Oh has this issue. It doesn't seem like Pokemon has this issue. I don't know what's going on at WotC. What their internal employee structure is that is allowing for all these leaks. I don't know. I will probably never know unless like I get in contact with some WotC employee, and even then I might be subject to an NDA, so it's like we'll probably never know. But like anyone, they've got to be working on it. That's like such a, like, it is like objectively like a loss in like their marketing budget, and a loss, like a tangible loss, at least in that. I'm not going to go so far as to say like their sales, because that's kind of extrapolated, but I can at least say like that's definitely a loss of money in their marketing budget that they have to designate for every like set and every product. So I don't know. I just hope it gets better. Seems to be an issue throughout the years. Yeah. Let's talk. How about you talk about this next point?
Yep. This next point's just kind of it's more, I guess, funny, or it reminds me of like the first Modern Horizons, I guess. But Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3 happened, and it was kind of like, so when Nadu got spoiled, everyone was like, that seems strong. That's going to be a problem. And then the tournament came where they like highlighted a lot of the cards from Modern Horizons 3. 7 out of the top 8 decks, I believe, were focused around Nadu. So it became a clear problem that like Nadu was an issue in Modern. And it took actually a while for them to ban it, just because they were trying to stick to a regular schedule. But by the time it finally came to them saying like, okay, Nadu's banned, he had won several large tournaments, and I think it took people out of Modern for a while because they were like, well, I'm not playing Nadu, so what's the point? Yeah, it just reminds me of like Hogak.
Yeah, I feel bad for other formats at times. Kind of makes me glad that I play Commander.
Okay. Yep. Blake, I feel like you probably know this topic a little better than me, so I'm going to let you talk about it.
Right. So, I'd say like about 3/4 into 2024, there was a big push from the CEDH community, again, the competitive EDH community, which is a subsect of the Commander community, to basically make their own RC, their own rules committee. Because for those of you who don't know, for most of Commander's history, it has been governed by the RC, like about a group of 4 or 5 individuals who first originated the format. And then within like the last couple of years, they had the CAG, the Commander Advisory Group, a group of about 10 individuals to help, quote unquote, advise the rules committee on making decisions for rules and for banning and unbanning cards, more or less. And throughout the years, there's always been the question of, within the community, of should CEDH just try and splinter off and make its own thing? And there have been various attempts, and seems like this was the most successful attempt. I say that with like heavy side eye, because like even then, like there was a CEDH like RC that announced itself, and within like 48 hours like imploded because it became clear that one of like the members was like deeply misogynistic and called into question the legitimacy of all the other members as well, and seems to have blindsided all the other CDHRC members, and basically it imploded, as I said. And so it was a big thing on like, if you're on social media, it was a big thing for like 2 days. And then it's like, okay, well, that happened, that was a stressful mess. And then I kid you not, maybe like a week or so later, there was like another group of like CDH people that are like, we're gonna try our own CDH RC and like try and be more inclusive and try to be more level-headed and not have toxic people in our leadership. And I kid you not, like the next day, I kid you not, the timing couldn't have been funnier. There was the commander ban announcement, or commander's rules update that's quarterly and happens 4 times a year. And everyone knows about it, but like the community always seems to forget, like, oh yeah, like the quarterly announcement's coming after like such and such set, as they always do. And so it blindsided everybody. And the Commander Rules Committee in this announcement said that Dockside Extortionist was banned, it banned Nadu, it banned Jeweled Lotus, and it banned Mana Crypt. And everyone was like more or less fine with Nadu, but like there was a large percentage of the player base that was not okay with the banning of Dockside Extortionist or Jeweled Lotus or Mana Crypt. A lot of money was lost. That's a huge dimension about it. I won't go into all the nuances about it because we made an episode about it, as well as a whole bunch of other Commander channels. What happened afterwards was that the Commander Rules Committee received a lot of death threats. And that's some serious shit. So much so that the Commander's Rules Committee handed over the governance of the Commander format to Wizards of the Coast. So that Wizards of the Coast could help like protect them against these death threats. And we are still sort of in the process of, as a player base, understanding like what the Wizards of the Coast is going to do with the Commander format. More or less, Wizards of the Coast has more or less like stayed the course of the original intentions of the Commander Rules Committee. That they're not trying to rock the boat. They are trying to just like create stability, which is definitely what was needed, because with the ban announcement, people felt the Commander was an unstable format. They were really concerned. They were afraid. That's why they lashed out with fear and anger. And so Wizards of the Coast, at least for now, it's been a month or two, they're trying to just sort of stay the course. They're not trying to ban or unban things. They're working on they've talked about implementing a bracket system, which has been a hotly debated thing, but they're more or less keeping they're working on that. Luckily they didn't push that out before they were ready at MagicCon Vegas, which would have been a quick 2-month turnaround, and it probably would have been bad, and people probably would have critiqued it and had very little faith in WotC managing the Commander format. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But it's just been this whole big mess. And despite all that, Guy and I are still here. We're still making this podcast, and we're still optimistic about the future.
Yeah, I would say I am more or less optimistic about the future. There's a couple things we'll get into in a moment that make me a little worried, but I think in general, this is kind of the best outcome of a
best of a bad situation
thing that happened. Yeah, I think I'm in general, I'm glad that, I guess I'm not happy we got to this point, but I am satisfied with where we're at now, I guess. Just to, I think, help manage the situation. They have announced the 17 or so people who will be on this. Kind of like the CAG, it's people from the community who will be consulted on the bans and unbans for the future. They're also the ones helping develop the tier list of cards and where they go on a power levels standpoint.
It's been compared to Pauper, where here's employees from Wizards of the Coast, and they've reached out to people across the globe in like who are key figures in different parts of the world who can get a pulse of the format in their area and be able to give a broad, diverse, accurate like feeling for like how the format's going. And hopefully like these people are like well educated and well informed about the current issues and like the history of the format to be able to give helpful advice to Wizards of the Coast employees who are ultimately the sole deciders of like decisions for the format. And so it's no longer like hopefully going to minimize harassment to these advisors, and these advisors are also being paid. They are no longer just like voluntary positions, which was what the like Commander's Rules Committee was. Like this was just a volunteer group of like people who've been playing for years and just loved the format and loved Magic. That's really what it was. So what I'm trying to say is it's a new structure. I still believe the game is in relatively good hands. I think it's a bit of a trade-off in terms of like positives and negatives in various factors, but Guy and I are still here. We're still playing. We're still talking about it.
Yep. And I think that's going to make 2025 very interesting in terms of, you know, will we see a lot of unbans? Will we, you know, and I mean, the crazy thing too is we still have like a month. We're recording this pretty early, because we felt confident. Like there's no more sets. Unlikely that there will be any kind of like major announcement in the next month. So we feel pretty confident that like going into 2025 or wrapping up 2024, all the big things have happened.
Wouldn't it be so funny if they unbanned Dockside between now and when this episode releases?
Watch it happen tomorrow. And it is November 24th as we are recording this. So, I mean, just watch them unban anything, and then it's kind of worth saying like, oh, they did it. Okay. The next big thing that happened kind of has several things in it. So Magic Las Vegas happened, and this was kind of the event of the year that also talks about next year. They always kind of tease the next sets that we're going to get. So Magic Vegas was like, okay, we're going to start with like Innistrad Remastered. Then we have Aether Drift, which is the car chase plane set. We're going to have the space set. We got Final Fantasy. We got Spider-Man. So they started talking about all the things that they're doing for next year. And one of the first big things that I would say people liked was that they announced the return of MSRP. I think it was about 4 years ago, maybe 5, where they said that they were going to take that off, or at least not give an MSRP to game stores. They were just going to say sell it at, you know, what you want. But this first announcement seemed to have pretty positive reactions. And we're just going to have to now kind of see, does the MSRP stay at a point where like, yeah, that was like affordable, or is still affordable for sets and cards, whereas instead of letting the stores dictate it, and maybe they can sell it a little less. So we'll see. It's one of those things again, 2025 will kind of tell. This next thing, though, was met with a lot less enthusiasm, but it is the idea that going forward, half of Magic sets are going to be Magic IP versus half of sets are going to be Universes Beyond. They've talked about how Universes Beyond is such a big draw for them in terms of getting new players. They are some of the most profitable sets. So they are going to be doing more Universes Beyond sets. And in addition to that, more of these Universes Beyond sets are going to be moving into Standard. So we are going to see a lot more crossover with cards that are not Magic IP in Magic. So
Yeah.
I
mean, I have a lot of
what
thoughts.
do you think, Blake?
I think it kind of just depends on like what demographic you are. If you're the kind of person that like is really into pop culture and like a little bit of everything, you're probably neutral or happy about this. Like you're like, all right, I love Magic, I love SpongeBob, I love Spider-Man, like I can just play with anything, I'm awesome. And then I think there's like the more dedicated like Magic fan base who mostly only care about Magic, me included. We're like, I just kind of came here to play Magic, I didn't necessarily come here to play SpongeBob. I don't really want to play SpongeBob cards, I don't want to play Spider-Man cards. In which case, they and myself are kind of at the point of like, I guess I only care about half of what Wizards of the Coast makes now. Similar to, like, y'all were listening, like, I did not care about the Assassin's Creed set. I am not going to care about the SpongeBob set. I'm not going to care about the Spider-Man set. In a way, it's kind of nice because it's like, I'm going to be, like, less burnt out. I'm only going to care about like half as much product. Does that make me a bad podcaster because now I'm not going to be aware of like all these new designs that are going to be in Universes Beyond products that may eventually come into in-universe products? In theory, yeah. But at the same time, that's a cost I'm willing to take. And maybe you'll get to laugh at me as like, oh, this mechanic was introduced in SpongeBob Universes Beyond. Like, you clearly like don't know shit, Blake. And I'm like, okay, you caught me. I don't care about SpongeBob Universes Beyond set. I missed that. I guess. I don't care. Like, I don't know. It's a bummer for me personally. But like, the Magic IP sets, yeah, dude, I'm here for them. I'm totally down.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what you just said. Though, at least for me personally, some of the first non-Magic sets that we're getting, like Final Fantasy, I am a fan of Final Fantasy. So, will I pay attention to that? Probably a little. Maybe not so much Spider-Man, and there's a third one that they have not announced what that'll be, but it is kind of like nice that, oh, I'm not going to really pay attention if they do Star Trek. I'm not really going to pay attention if they do Dawson's Creek. You know, these things that I don't have an investment in, it will be nice to not feel the pressure or FOMO so much. I think the one thing is, like, I may still need to, like, pay attention a little, especially if I play with someone who's like, oh, I'm going to play my Gary the Snail deck. And I'm like, I didn't quite pay attention to, you know, as those cards were coming out. What does Gary do, you know? So, I think as a general Magic player, it will be good for me to at least kind of pay attention to, like, what are some of the most popular cards out of that set. But I don't need to know every card. And yeah, it'll just kind of be nice to be able to breathe.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. I mean, I can't argue with like someone who loves SpongeBob and like they hear about this. It's the classic, like, I can't get mad at someone who knows the Universes Beyond IP and like because of that one factor they get into Magic and start playing Magic. Like, I can't fault them for that. Like, I can't fault someone for loving SpongeBob, hearing that there's going to be a SpongeBob set in Magic and then start getting into Magic and they have a fun time. Like, I can't be mad at that. And like, I mean, I can't be surprised that Wizards of the Coast is going to try to get more players and grow the player base. Like, it's just how capitalism be. So it's like, I mean, I guess I can be mad, but I'm not surprised.
And I think Mark Rosewater has said that this is the normal for now. It doesn't mean that this will be the normal forever. So if they do find success in bringing new players into the game through these universes beyond, maybe they do reach a point where it's like, okay, we got a good number of people who are still interested in Magic, and we have found that the Magic IPs are now selling better. Maybe we could back off the universes beyond because we got so many people interested into Magic through the universes beyond. But now that we have built our fan base more, we can, continue to just make Magic IP sets. So I think that's something we'll see maybe in 2 or 3 years, like how they feel about that.
We'll see.
But it is the norm for now. And then the last controversy that at least we wrote down was the Marvel Secret Lair fiasco. We talked about it a little earlier with just in general the 5 new commander cards, or cards that could be your commander. So there were 5 secret layers. Each one was centered around a different Marvel hero: Black Panther, Storm, Captain America, Iron Man, Wolverine. And then they had 4 to 5 other reprints, but skinned like Marvel cards. And a lot of people were like, oh yes, I really want these. And it was pretty much hyped up to be, we are going to sell this out day one, probably within the first couple hours of it being released. So a lot of people got online, a lot of people got in line. There were some issues with the site being able to handle the amount of people that got online, and a lot of people ended up not getting them. And there were people who were able to kind of cheat the system and buy kind of the maximum number. But WotC just needs to kind of go back to doing secret layers print to demand. Yeah, it was not great. Not a great start to Marvel.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Like, Wizards of the Coast has really struggled with secret layers ever since the beginning. It's been a number of years now. Still struggling to get like the cardstock quality and the level of availability to every player who wants them within a like fiscally viable method to them. So it's just a lot of issues, and they still have not seemed to fix it. In addition to the whole like crash sighting, or the site crashing during peak demand.
Yeah. I was able to get these cards, and I feel fortunate that I didn't have issues. I will say that, at least from the quality of the product itself, these cards do feel really nice, and I hope that this applies to future secret layers that they print. But, yeah. They have talked about how in future sets we will likely see these cards reprinted, maybe not with the exact same art, but they will be available in the future. But for right now, I feel like I've seen a lot of people just say like, fuck it, I'm gonna proxy. And it's like, sure, like I understand your frustration, and if you weren't able to get these cards, like, I do not fault you for doing that instead of spending $50 to $60 per card to get, the legitimate version,
Yeah. So, Guy, how are you feeling going into 2025? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Like, at this time, we know a number of the sets. Like we said, half of them are going to be Universes Beyond, half of them are going to be in-universe Magic sets. What do you think about the product line? What do you How do you feel emotionally going into the next year about the state of the format?
I think the best way to feel is to feel optimistic. I think so many times people have said like Magic is dead because of one thing, and it's like, no, Magic's doing fine. It's just going to be, you know, how do we deal with kind of these big changes in terms of the types of products we're getting, so more Universes Beyond stuff, and then also Wizards taking over the format. There seems to be a lot of unknowns, and I think just going into the future, I want to remain positive, and time will just kind of tell, were some of these decisions made the right decisions, or will they have to course correct? I think Magic is far from dead. They've proven that with just the number of sales that they can pull, and the general interest and player base has grown significantly.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
I've always kind of thought, like, if Magic's going to die, it is going to be, or if Commander's going to die, it's going to be because of a decision or a number of decisions by Wizards of the Coast. And now the format is fully in control by Wizards of the Coast. So we'll see what decisions they make in terms of banning or unbanning or choosing to do nothing. What they choose to do in terms of rules updates. What they choose to do in terms of printing new cards. What they choose to do, and we'll see how the player base and potential player base reacts to a 50-50 Universes Beyond versus in universe properties. This next year, 2025, I'm kind of just holding my breath and seeing how the decisions of WotC specifically is going to dictate the future.
I think the big thing is you vote with your wallet. You just kind of have to, support what you like and don't support what you don't like.
Yep. So with that, I'd like to wrap up the episode and just say thank you all for listening. We are the Wizard Staff Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave a like and review. It actually really does help us out. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. We are no longer on Twitter. We have left that format. Fuck Elon Musk. And with that, send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are, because we get things wrong sometimes, and whatever. Well, thank you again for listening. We had a great time. We hope you have a great night. Peace out.
Peace.